Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am pretty impressed that there are so many people who have come to my talk on Friday afternoon and the last day, just after lunch. So I will not be insulted if you fall asleep because you've just been eating, like I probably would. So anyway, hello. My name's Sarah Young. I'm going to talk to you about security architecture stuff today. Look, I'm not going to say that I am going to be able to tell you how to secure absolutely everything in the next hour, because clearly I can't do that. But what I do want to do is give you an overview of some of the high-level things you should be thinking about. Now, this isn't specific to any particular cloud. I don't care. I mean, I work for Microsoft, but I don't care what cloud you're building on, because as a security person, the high-level principles are actually... oh my God, is it that bad? No. God, I haven't even started yet. If you sit in the front and you go away right at the start, I'm going to have to say something. It doesn't matter what cloud you are building on. High-level security principles remain the same, and the theories and the things we should be thinking about. When we get down to the nitty-gritty of how we implement things, maybe it might be slightly different, but what I want to talk about is capabilities and the kind of controls you should be thinking about. So let's crack on and get into it. So who am I? I'm Sarah Young. I am a cloud security advocate at Microsoft. You may have come across other kind of advocates in Microsoft. The security team is quite new. I've been doing this job for about a year, but I've been doing community stuff and speaking for quite a long time. I've done security, I say, since before it was cool, because security's cool now, but it didn't used to be. I was not impressed when I got put in security back in the day. I like talking about security, unsurprisingly. That's why I have the job I do. I've written some Microsoft Press books. I only write Microsoft Press books because one of my dogs has a thing about breaking his teeth, and then it pays vet's bills. That is not a joke either. Has anyone ever had to pay for their dog to have a root canal? Yes. Did anyone even know dogs could have root canals? So there you go. They can. Anyway, I also do a podcast which is about Azure security, and I'm pretty much a crazy dog woman. I'm a woman with too much income and single in my mid-30s, so clearly I have furry children. Before we go on, as I said, this talk isn't going to teach you absolutely everything you need to know about creating a security framework and an architecture in an hour, but I want to talk about these high-level principles, and as you are mostly, I would assume in this room, more development people, what you should care about as a developer and security. And just things you should be mindful of, because we talk Devsecops, we talk shift left, let's everybody work together. But let's be honest with you, I think this has always been traditionally the mindset, which is like, how the hell do I get security to go away? And get off my case and stop telling me I can't do things and leave me in peace so I can build stuff. I am cool with that. Because, essentially, I would like to apologize on behalf of security as a whole function, because we suck. We really do suck. What we are bad at, and what we have been bad at for a long time, is talking to the rest of IT. We are really bad. So whether it's devs, whether it's other parts of IT, we've always been really, really bad. We write documents for each other security people, not for anybody else. We say no, and then we go, oh, you just can't do that. Oh, it's insecure, don't do it. But we didn't offer any alternatives. And so what happened? People didn't talk to us anymore. So this is what I say about us reviewing each other's content. We're like, yeah, that's great. Looks great, other security person. And then we wonder why other parts of IT don't do what we think they're going to do because we haven't communicated with them well. I'm going to say, you can be honest with me. Who kind of generally has a fairly negative opinion of security, or has had bad experiences with security in the past? Come on. Yeah. And mostly the rest of you are lying, I reckon. So, yeah, we have historically not been great. And so, first of all, I'd like to offer my apology. I think things are changing. We still have kind of the old school mentality that there are some people with the old school mentality that we are security, we are God, thou shalt not do this, and you just shouldn't cause security, which isn't very helpful. Anyway, I'm going to hopefully give you some pointers and tips and things that you should know about that will help you better communicate with your security team. But first of all, because this is always fun, let's look at what has changed. And in terms of security, a lot has changed generally in IT in the last 5 to 10 years since we've put things in cloud. But just thinking about security in particular, obviously now we've got hybrid of everything. So we have lots of different environments to look at. We have on-prem, we have clouds, you may have multiple clouds, we've got SaaS services, you may have IoT and OT. And the threat landscape, of course, has changed. The attacks that we see now are not the attacks we had 10 years ago, and that stuff changes very quickly. Also, it's not just a security problem, but we have shared responsibility model, which I'll talk about a bit more later, but you have your business and you'll be building on somebody's cloud. And so where does the responsibility sit? That's something that we have to be clear on as well. And then, as with the rest of IT, we have changing processes and architectures in security terms too. So if we have a look, I've been using this, I've been experimenting with PowerPoint different animations, and I'm like, oh, look at that transition, and because I'm just used to boring ones. Anyway, this is how we started. So this is on-prem. You can see we have a data center. We have 5 firewalls, which I would argue is excessive. But what we can see here is that we have a perimeter. It's a very, very strongly defined perimeter. We've got our servers, we've got our machines, we've got our endpoints, we've got our mobile devices, but they're all basically within a network perimeter. And what happened maybe, 10-ish years ago? We started to get SaaS applications. So SaaS applications were built somewhere else, and we would start using them. So it could be Office, it could be Google Docs, Salesforce, whatever. So you can see now our perimeter has changed. We do not have everything inside the data center. And then what happened? Everybody wanted to use their own devices that were not VPN'd into things. So we start to get more mobile things. And basically, employees, as I'm sure most of you know, started to demand they could work in this way. And then you may have also had Internet of Things, and then I'm sure everybody in here has infrastructure as a service or platform as a service, i.e. third-party clouds. So you can see here, we've got a lot of different things, and none of them are in the data center anymore. So essentially what's happened is we have a completely different perimeter. We have the traditional network one, but our modern perimeter isn't in a data center, which means we can't use just network controls. We have to look at identity. And now I'll talk a bit about that later, but essentially we can't just think firewall, 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 because it doesn't work anymore because we don't have everything in one data center. So that's the first thing. And so this is probably one of the biggest drivers for how we've had to shift up security architecture. And then we have our threat landscape. Now, I love these statistics. They come from Microsoft Research. We've got a lot of security researchers who spend a lot of time looking on the dark web. And I'll put the whole thing up, and the prices are in US dollars. And we'll just kind of go round the circle. So a lot of people worry about 0 days. If there's anyone in the room that doesn't know what a 0 day is, that's a attack or an exploit that has no patch, and that has no patch available, and that's why we call it a 0 day. Now, of course, when 0 days are discovered, the idea is that it gets patched very quickly, but people are very worried about them. But look, to develop a 0 day will vary, but the price varies from about $5,000 to $350,000. It takes a lot of time and money to do a 0 day or to develop a 0 day. It's not easy. So whilst we need to be concerned about them, let's have a look at some of the other things on here. So a compromised device, under $1. DDoS, as you can see, if you buy it for a day, a week, or a month, it gets cheaper. So I have a friend who works for, in New Zealand, the government-funded Public Emergency Cyber Response Team, or the CERT. Anyone want to take a guess? And so that's the, Mish, you know the answer to this. Don't put your hand up. So anyone want to take a guess? And so this is for ordinary members of the public to call when they have cyber concerns, security concerns. What their most frequent call is about? Anyone? I know, I realize I'm asking questions and it's Norway, so people are quiet, but... Okay, fine. So their most frequent call, or pretty much their most frequent call, is from parents whose children are DDoSing each other on things like Xbox Live and Fortnite, when they're playing Fortnite and other online games, because you can go online, you can buy a very basic DDoS service for like $1. And so what teenagers are doing is going to DDoS their rival to knock them out of the game so they can win. And I'm not joking, okay? So, yeah, I know. But think about this, right? So if teenagers playing Fortnite or whatever it is are able to acquire these kind of security tools, teenagers who are silly, think what like a serious person could do and how scarily accessible some of this stuff is. So ransomware, anyone not know what ransomware is? Sweet. Oh, was that a hand up? So basically, ransomware is malware, just in case anyone didn't want to put the hand up. Ransomware is malware that will effectively, when it gets into your system, it basically goes and encrypts all your files, and you're going to have a very bad day. The ransomware is very smart at going through everything, and it will also look for backups. So if you don't have backups adequately separated, it will go and ransomware all your backups as well. The reason it looks for backups is because if you have a ransomware attack, if you have a good separated current backup, you can clear away the ransomware and just restore from your backup. Now, the reason it's called ransomware is the idea is that if all your files are locked up, then the attackers will say, oh, well, if you pay us 10 Bitcoin or whatever it is, I don't know the going rate for what they ask for, we'll unlock everything. We'll give you the key so you can unencrypt your files. And the fact is, a lot of businesses pay, and they don't talk about it. It's small mum and dad businesses that, they don't have backups. They can't afford big specialist consultants, so they will pay. And it's really sad. Anyway, so ransomware, you can buy your own ransomware kit. You don't have to write your own. You can buy it for about $66 on the dark web. And this one is particularly disturbing. You can, on the dark web, go and basically get ransomware as a service, because you will commission someone to go and ransomware your enemy, the company you want to ransomware. And then when they pay up, they take 30% of the profit. They clip the ticket. So yeah, it's very accessible. So although we worry about 0 days, I won't talk about the rest of them because I love this slide and I can talk about it for half an hour. But we had to put into perspective the things we need to care about. Although 0 days are scary, it's those everyday risks that we really care about. Again, just real quick though, these are kind of our multi-cloud threats, sort of old and new. So we talked about ransomware and cred theft. I talked about ransomware, cred theft. That's the other one that are really, really high. We see a lot of the credential theft. So if you hear security, who uses multi-factor authentication? Yes. Who has ever heard someone refuse to use it because it's difficult? Yes. Okay, yes, exactly. It's difficult. It used to be difficult, I'll give you that. Now it's, I think, very easy, but, we still have a lot of people. I don't need MFA. Why would I need MFA? And actually, the research shows about 85% of breaches would not happen if MFA had been turned on. So, go turn it on if you haven't. But you see, we've got some new techniques as well. Getting the keys out of GitHub, that's a good one. People accidentally uploading keys to repos. And of course, we've got this pivot pivot from on-premise to cloud and the other way around. Of course, that didn't exist before we had cloud. Crypto miners, Scott Helm did a talk about cryptojacking yesterday. If you didn't see that, whenever they put the recordings on, go watch it, super interesting. But, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And just to wrap up on, I love like telling, I love all the stats, is API attacks. So again, going in. Yes, I know it's on there, isn't it good? So for the Australian contingent in the room, the one that's down there that says Optus is, if you don't know, it's one of the big Australian telcos. They had a massive breach in November. Essentially what happened was someone in Optus put an API on the internet that was completely unauthenticated and put the whole customer database behind it. So someone pulled the entire customer database. Yeah, not great, but we've had other attacks there as well. So, API security is a really big one now because let's face it, that's how most things are talking to each other if it's not a user. So in terms of the capabilities that you need, so I work for Microsoft, but I might slip up and say a product name, but essentially what I want to talk to you about is the capability. Essentially, it doesn't matter. If you're using Microsoft, great, good on you. But if you're using an alternative tool that's the same capability, that's also fine because, we're talking about how we do this security. So, the sort of stuff you need is threat detection and SIEM. SIEM, if you're unfamiliar, is security information and event monitoring. So your Splunks and your Sentinels and things like that. It's something that sits across all of your estate, sucking up logs so you can do correlation to look for weird and wonderful things that may be an attack. I've already talked about having MFA. MFA helps with things like spear phishing and stolen passwords. And then we still have, I know I've kind of been bad-mouthing firewall and network security, but that's still important. It's just we can't use it as our only line of defense. And then we've also got things like security guidance. Again, all the major vendors have security guidance, but we also have industry things from NIST and CIS. I'll talk about them again a bit more later. But there's loads of stuff out there, and I realize there's so much to consume, but even if security isn't your number one thing, like just being aware of the kind of capabilities we have is good. Also, these tools have developed massively over the past 10, 15 years. I'll talk about it a bit later. Does anyone remember DLP, data loss prevention software? Did anyone have the old network-based stuff that didn't really work properly? I worked in a bank and we had it. And basically, in order to get around it, all you had to do was zip a file. And then you could email it out and it couldn't stop it. It wasn't great. And a lot of DLP was like that. We now have super cool tools that help with this stuff that actually work because the technology's come a long way. Because I tried to break it, because that's what security people do. The other thing is shared responsibility. Now, this isn't just a security-specific thing, and I'm not going into it loads, but essentially, no matter what cloud you're on, you have a shared responsibility model. In the very early days of cloud security, we tended to see people go to one of two extremes. They were like, I've put my stuff in the cloud, security's not my problem anymore. Wrong. Or there'd be, I've put my stuff in the cloud, but I still want to control everything. Can I come and see your data center? And you can't usually go see your cloud provider's data center. Has anybody ever asked to do that? They'll probably tell you no. No, I'm telling you, they'll tell you no. But again, but the thing that's confusing is that depending on the service you use, if it's IaaS, if it's PaaS, there's still differences. And so the reason it's important to understand this is because, of course, you don't want a mismatch in what you think your cloud provider security controls are and what they're doing and what you're doing. Because if there's a mismatch there could be a gap in the middle. So again, if you're building on a new thing, no matter what cloud provider you're using, make sure you're clear who is doing what and whether you need to build something in. And then last bit of changing things. I'm not going to have a big Devsecops talk because that's not what I want to do. But we've seen a lot of things change as well in terms of roles. So, rather than doing a project thing, we're just doing continuous engagement. We're not just using network, we're using identity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is like the whole shift left thing more generally, so I don't want to labor the point because I'm sure everyone's familiar with it. But then the one thing we do forget is the human side of change. So I'll put all of this up, but we don't sometimes we just force things on people and we don't. I often say, in fact, I say pretty much every day, that the tech side of things is very easy. It's the people side of things that's hard, and I think this is where we fall down. Just out of interest, has anyone ever had, I know lots of people said they'd had bad experiences with security. Has anyone had, a good experience with security, probably more recently, where they've sat down and talked to them? One, so fewer hands, I know. One, two, yeah. Because we're not great at communicating. I think IT, there are some great communicators in IT, in tech, but it's not our core skill set, and we don't talk about, why things are important, or we don't explain why something should be important to somebody else. Like I said, traditionally security would be like, thou shalt not do this, and if anyone asks why, or pointed out to them that would make their job very difficult, we'd be like, well, we don't care because it's security, so you've just got to do it, which doesn't make us very popular. So, there's a human side to this as well. So, again, so many things I can talk about. This is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, I realize, of all the things. But let's talk about these adoption models and how we would generally adopt things. So the great thing is, in terms of security, putting things in the cloud and modernizing them is a really, really great opportunity to actually make security better. But we also have to remember that we can't forget about the old stuff too. We actually have to span everything, which makes it more complicated. It's also a really good time to get rid of brownfield and stuff, and legacy debt. Although sometimes, you have the argument, we have no budget, we can't do that, that isn't in the scope. But it is really, really important. So this is probably familiar, or this kind of concept should be familiar to you, because again, not a security specific thing, but ideally you would put things in SaaS if you can, if you're modernizing things. Not everything, of course, can go in SaaS, so then you'd put brand new stuff into PaaS, and then you might put your existing workloads into IaaS and then convert it to PaaS later on if you can. Because we know that if you just basically lift and shift stuff into a cloud, again, doesn't matter which cloud, generally it's more expensive and inefficient until it's been optimized for cloud. So if anyone isn't familiar with SaaS, PaaS, and does everyone know all the different types of the various different analogies you have to explain SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS? Has anyone heard the pizza one? Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's my favorite.
You like the pizza one? I quite like the hotel one here. So you have your hotel room, furnished apartment, rental apartment, private cloud. I'm quite a fan of this one actually, but yeah. Now I always ask people this: what is the thing that no, can't do it there? No, no. Does it not? Oh, look at that! It's like a really flash screen that doesn't do my pointer. Anyway, the vehicle on the far right. What is it? I get different answers depending on where I show this in the world.
Bus, tram, or train?
That's a train.
Tram. See, people from Melbourne always say it's a tram. Yeah. No, you're not from. Well, no, you're not. Okay, yeah, you're from Australia though. You're sat next to someone from Melbourne. That's close enough.
That's a metro train.
It's a metro train. Okay. It's a train, but it's a modern train. When I was in Japan, I got bullet train, and I was like, yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, bullet train. That's not even a joke. So, again, the reason hopefully all of this kind of stuff is familiar to you as well. We have IaaS, the old stuff. We can shoehorn that into the cloud. Often it doesn't work amazingly. It's very, very code heavy. We're using VMs. And then as we transform across, the idea is that we move things onto it says Azure. I was supposed to take out Azure. But again, so whatever cloud provider services you're using, and then you also start to lose some of your security responsibility. So, when you use PaaS, you don't have to do OS updates and things like that. I mean, of course, there is stuff you need to do, but, the idea is that it gets lighter and your some of your security responsibility at least starts to move away. And again, this is kind of same thing, but looking slightly different here. We're sort of moving out of that monolithic architecture into your blended architecture and then into serverless. This is, again, not security specific, but I just like to sort of cover it off there because it does change the security aspects of things too. I love this slide. So we talk about Devsecops a lot. And it means different things to different people. I still think we're really bad at actually, basically defining it well. And this is where we run into a sticking point. Everything I've shown you so far, that sort of moving your applications along and how you build them, I don't think that's very contested. And then we get to this. So this is what we would do in an ideal world. We've moved from waterfall, which is the top one there, is we have all the stage gates, and then things go into production. Whereas with DevOps, we have incremental changes, and then we get released. Now, security often gets in the way of this. Look, I see knowing nods. So the problem we have, and it is the security really like to check everything, or like end to end still, trying to do whose security team tries to do waterfall on them with DevOps? What I mean is that they want to check the entire thing for every single tiny little incremental change you do. I got one knowing nod, I'll take it. But this is a problem that we have, is that in the development world, I think we are, and teams are better and worse, it really depends. But in the development world, we've got really good at the DevOps piece in general, but security still has this mindset that they have to check everything, and that unless they've checked absolutely everything in every single change, it can't go into prod. And this is where we start to get a problem. The problem is securities, by the way. So, it's tricky. I think we're getting better at it. The automated tools and the capabilities I'm going to talk about a little bit later, they really, really help with this. But it is essentially, though, also a psychological problem. As I said, security, it's a chicken and egg situation, because security need to let go a little bit and trust people to do the right thing. And then the rest of IT needs to sort of up their security game a little. But which comes first and how you develop that trust, I don't have a good answer for yet. I'm hoping as time goes on we will. But it's a real challenge. I think that the security letting go and trusting the rest of the IT org to do the right thing. But yeah, we'll talk about some of the tools later on that you should be aware of if you're not already using them, that will also help with that. But also, we want to avoid antipatterns. So let's see if some of these sound familiar to you. If anyone doesn't know what an antipattern is, as you see, here's the definition. It's a common response to a recurring problem that is usually ineffective and risks being highly counterproductive. In other words, it's the really stupid things you do that make no sense, but you keep doing them. What we want to do is do following best practices. Let's look at our top anti-patterns in sort of security terms. Positioning security as an adversary to business and IT. Because here's the thing. Security just really, some security people really think it's like their sacred mission, that they don't care. They don't care. What a lot of security people forget is they are a function of the rest of the business. And so if security just stops business being done and other work being done, it's actually not good security. But I'm sure, everyone put their hand up before. We're familiar with this security being quite causing a lot of friction. Let's put it nicely. The other one is using on-premise controls to secure the cloud. Now, as I'll talk about in a bit, the tools are quite different between on-premise and cloud, and the technology has come a long way. Some security tools will still work in cloud, some really do not. And again, with cost saving and the economy at the moment, people say things like, do more with less. They just say, oh, we'll just use the same tools, we'll use the same processes, it'll be fine. Here's a good one. Has anyone built something, forgotten to talk to security about it, and then security have tried to put some security controls on it later? There. Okay. It happens all the time, but it's really difficult. It makes things super ass hard. So don't do that. But the last one, again, another psychological thing, like a mindset thing. Security try to own the risk. So again, this is our kind of hero mentality. We're like, oh, we have to secure this. When we give advice. Security should just be giving you advice. It's not security's call whether you should fix a vulnerability or not. So if you have an app, it's got a severe vulnerability in it, but whoever owns that business or that function says, nah, we'll go live with that. I'm okay to accept the risk. That's okay. Security don't own risk, but we're kind of like sometimes God complexes and savior complexes, and we try and own risk, and we really shouldn't. And again, the problem with that is, well, these are all psychological problems. It is not good. And it means that things don't get done and we don't have the right conversations. Also, if your security team do own all your security risks internally, then you probably need to, not that it's probably your problem personally, but not a great one to look at. So what do you do then? I have whinged a lot about, not whinge, I've talked a lot about sort of the different challenges. Hopefully most of those will be familiar to you in some way, shape or form. I don't want to, we're not criticizing anybody. Doing best practices is really hard and there's so many other factors in it. But things that we can do is use benchmarks and baselines, use landing zones. Again, doesn't matter what cloud you're in here. I don't mind. It really doesn't matter. We have benchmarks. So if your cloud provider will have benchmarks, but there are industry standards. So we have the Center for Internet Security. That's like a conglomeration of the big vendors, and they provide like good high-level security practices. NIST, they're the standards in the US. They also have security practices that they publish. And we've got PCI. There's obviously, of course, you'll have your local government, your local industry, all of those benchmarks. So if you don't know, if you're like fairly new to moving into cloud or doing security in cloud, those sort of industry standards will help you. You don't have to write your own from scratch. I have seen when I was a consultant, I saw security teams try and write their own benchmarks from scratch when they could have adapted what we already had with people who knew more. Now, I'm sure most of you here are familiar with a landing zone. Landing zones are great. Again, doesn't matter what cloud you're in. A landing zone is like a pre-built area where it actually hooks, and it will hook you in. It's a standardized sort of cookie cutter template to put in a service, and if it's done right in terms of security, it will automatically hook you up to like your monitoring, it will hook you up to your threat protection, etc., etc. I think a lot of people forget about landing zones in a security context, so it is important to remember that you need to have the monitoring in there. You need to hook whatever service it is, that whole landing zone, into your identity provider, whatever that happens to be. And, this is the glue that puts everything together. And you want to use the landing zone as you build something, because as I was saying before, trying to reverse engineer security controls in is just horrible and doesn't work super well. In terms of a good landing zone, as I said, it's going to allow you to have visibility. It's going to be standardized or cookie-cutted. I like to say cookie-cutted. And it's going to have, and it will help also monitor compliance stuff, which is great. And I know compliance, most people start to say compliance, oh my God. But you might not care about compliance, but what I mean by compliance is more like your security hygiene monitoring. And then really, really good landing zones automatically start to apply updates and things like that, and updated security controls. Security used to be incredibly manual. You would have to go in, manually apply patches. You would have to go in and update things. The vast majority of that tedious work now can be automated. So again, when I always go back to my working for a bank, has anyone ever done an identity permissions review? I was talking about this yesterday. So basically, it's when you get a printout of accounts, you get a printout of all the permissions that account has, and then you have to work out whether or not that account still needs that permission, and it's manual. And we used to do this manually. Nowadays, we have tools that will do it in like 5 minutes or even less, and just say, hey, the following accounts haven't used this permission for 3 months. Do you want to get rid of it? So doing that sort of security hygiene tidy up has become 1 billion times easier with automation and kind of the power and the back end of cloud stuff. So that's really important. But you can see here, as just on our landing zone, I was going to do this, but remembered it doesn't work. Workloads already go into your monitoring, whatever it is. You use standard identity roles. Okay. Who remembers? We still use it. Traditional on-prem AD. Who has millions of roles in their AD and they have no idea what they're for? If anybody has the luxury of looking at your AD. I see knowing smiles. And does it have lots of OUs as well that just go down and down and down and down and down, like into OU hell? Because, and no one knows why it's there, but no one dares get rid of it because, yeah. So, I mean, modern identity is much, much flatter, but we shouldn't be creating like super custom roles for every tiny little thing. Like they should be standardized. I put Azure Policy, damn it. Policy, what I mean by policy is guardrails. So again, I can't remember what it's called in the other clouds. You'll have to go look it up. But essentially, what these things do is basically, it stops you from doing silly things. And your security team should be configuring this stuff. It stops your cloud essentially turning into the Wild West of doing whatever the heck people want. So the good example I give is deploying to different regions. So we're not in the EU. I know we're in the European Economic Area. I'm sure most of you here probably don't want to deploy to cloud regions outside of Europe, or you're not allowed to. So what you could do with a policy is you would put in a policy, you can only deploy to these regions, like European regions. And if someone tried to do it somewhere else, it would actually stop them. Now that's a really, really basic version, but you could get much more complicated. You can't deploy certain types of workloads. You can't deploy anything with a public-facing IP. It just stops people doing very, very silly things. And so that sort of policy, if you're not doing that at all, go chat to your security team about it. Because I'm not saying it's necessarily a dev's thing to like have to go and implement, but what you can do is help the security team understand what you do need and what you don't need, because the last thing you want is to try and build something and the policy is incorrect and it stops you doing your job. But that policy is just magic. I'm really obsessed with it. It's an incredibly underloved tool in security. It's very, very smart. It can even, when you get very, very advanced with it, you can get crazy granular. You can actually make policy, if someone deletes something, policy can re-provision it. It's pretty cool. So, looking at my time. Lastly, this is sort of my second half of the talk. So I was talking about capabilities you should know about and things you should be doing. This is Sarah's sort of 15, 20 minutes of things that you should be doing or should be aware of. I realize most of you are building things, but these are the things, if you're building an application, if you're building and developing things, this is stuff you should be aware of that you should be plugging into. And if your security team isn't helping you, go and talk to them. And it's because this is important to know, even if it's not what you do every day, I promise. So for identity, I'm saying store your user identities in Azure AD. If it's not Azure AD, that's fine. Store it in a central place. You shouldn't be creating, nowadays, there's absolutely no need to have a little individual identity store that's not connected to anything else. You may remember that old school AD used to just use very proprietary protocols like Hello Kerberos and things like that. But nowadays, everything's open source, everything's standardized, it's open standards. We talk to everything. You should be using something called conditional access. Again, it will have a different name, maybe if you're not using Azure AD. If you came to my talk yesterday, I talked about it. But essentially, it's modernization of account lockouts. So you may remember, do your password wrong 5 times, and you get locked out. So conditional access is smarter. What it does is it looks at all the different factors of your login, so where you logged in from, what device you logged in from, what time, assigns it a risk, and then you decide, if it's high risk, what do we do? If it's medium risk, what do we do? So you can block people, you can make them re-authenticate. Again, what you pick will probably be up to your security team, but that's super, super important. I already talked about MFA. I cannot stress, if there is one thing you take away from this talk, go and turn MFA on everything. Everything. Everyone should be using it. I got lots of good hands up, so I think I'm talking to the converted. Be using a key store to put your certificates and keys and secrets in. I think people are really good at that, but don't use strings when you could use like a proper identity. Again, when I say proper identity, workload identities and machine identities can be handled by a directory service nowadays. You don't need to just use a little string because it's not got sufficient protection. And integrating them, I promise, is a lot easier. I had a conversation a few months ago with a colleague internally who's a Python man, and he was like, do you think I should put this string in key vault? And I was like, yes. And then I was like, but why are you even using a string? You could be using a managed identity. And of course, like, make sure you have good, strong passwords. Like, yeah, I know. But of course, it's more than just strong passwords. Did you know that now we say the official advice is you do not change your password every 90 days. Password rotation is out because no one does it properly. I'm going to say, is there anybody in the room who has not, when they've been asked to change their password every 90 days, just added a number or an exclamation mark or a question mark? You're lying. Do you actually change it more than just add an extra number on? I know, but you shouldn't be. Nowadays, like I know internally at Microsoft, we don't even change the passwords every 90 days anymore. It's actually gone from the official recommendations for... But people love it, though, because they think it's important, I know. Excellent, good on you. But yes, password managers are great. Use the password manager for personal thing. And as I was saying, use a managed identity. If it's not Azure AD, that's also fine. And okay, other question, I did ask people this yesterday, just how many people here have made a certificate or a secret that expires in like 1,000 years because it's easier? What was that, Mish?
Oh, GitHub doesn't let you do it anymore.
What's the limit?
24
I think it's like, how many years?
24 months.
Yeah.
24 months?
Yeah,
So for anyone who didn't hear that, GitHub only allows you to do 24 months now, but which is good, excellent, good on you, GitHub. But please don't do that. Like, it's really, really quite a bad idea. And for connectivity, you should be using a bastion or a jump host. Having said that, if you are using a bastion or a jump host to access things, do you patch your bastion and jump host and keep it up to date? Or is it your little box that you spun up randomly and it's just been sat there and it's completely outside everything? I know for most people it's probably the latter. So there are a lot of PaaS services now that do bastion and jump hosting, and then it's somebody else's job to keep it up to date. Use something like that. Also, use API management tooling, something that will throttle APIs and cache and things like that, and do load balancing. Load balancing, I know this can... You could argue load balancing isn't a security thing, but it is because part of security is availability, and load balancing things does improve your availability. And last but not least, I think this should be obvious, but please encrypt your stuff. Just encrypt it at rest, in transit. It's not hard. You may remember back in the day when you encrypted everything, it would really take a hit on performance for things. That is not the case anymore. It's really not, so go and have a look. We should have zero unprotected communications. Like, it's just not necessary anymore. The compute power, the algorithms are so much better. I did want to very quickly, you should have something across your APIs, like a proper API protection tool. This is the kind of stuff it should be doing. Security, it should be looking at the security posture of your APIs. So, for example, if you're like an Australian telco that have a completely unauthenticated API, like you should have a tool that should scan that and be like, hey, I think you should fix this. And it can help you harden things, and it should be monitoring your APIs. It's basically like your threat detection, but for an API. So if it sees unusual things, it should send an alert for your security team. So as a dev, why should you care? What you should be doing is making sure, seeing if you have something like this, and if you do, making sure your APIs are hooked into this tooling. That's what I ask of you. And then logging and monitoring. Look, I'm not, again, mostly this should be a security operations team thing. But if you're building things, make sure it has logs. Make sure the logs are in a format that can be exported into a monitoring system, and make sure they're going into a central store. And automate as much as you can. Probably more for security teams, but if we don't have logs, I actually have a sticker that says "No logs, no crime." So although you may not be the ones doing the monitoring, make sure that you create logs that security can can do something with. Here are some of the kind of scenarios that you probably want to log. Some of this stuff wouldn't be part of your application, some of it would. Attempts to sign into disabled accounts should come from your identity store, but authentication things, inbox rules, this is just a very, very short thing. But anything that you think is important or that might be abused from a security perspective, make sure that you have the capability to log it. Because if it can't be logged, if it's not logged, it's not monitored. Posture management. Now, I'm a big fan of posture management. It's called, shortened to CSPM, which is Cloud Security Posture Management. Essentially, this is a tool that takes care of all the really boring stuff for you. So what it does is it will just sort of scan your environment, and it will do, most CSPMs will do multiple clouds and your on-premise, and it will look at your security hygiene. So security hygiene is basically talking about the really boring bits of security that no one finds exciting. It's keeping things up to date, as in patched. It's having MFA turned on. It's not having storage accounts open to the internet. It's basically the really common sense stuff that we see exploited time and time and time again. I've got a link to it at the end, but we have, Microsoft releases a digital defense report every year, and it's just like it's a summary of all the stuff we find with our research teams. And other companies also do the same, and everyone says the same thing, that something like 90% of security breaches and attacks would have been mitigated if there was good security hygiene. There's a really big misconception that attackers go and look for something really, really complicated to hack and sit there like blah, 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 on their hoodie, with their black hoodie on. That's actually not accurate. Most attackers are in it for the money. They will find if you've just not patched your machine for 5 years, and there's something exploitable running on that machine, they're going to go for that rather than spend a week trying to break in a super clever way. It's just a thing. But unfortunately, when big breaches happen, often companies, to save face, will keep saying, this was a very sophisticated attack. That's like the line. They're like, it was very sophisticated. That, by the way, if you hear that or something to that effect, almost guarantees it wasn't. Because they want to save face. But the fact is that, apart from some edge cases, 85-90% of breaches happen because of this security hygiene not being done well. And it's not super exciting, it's not super sexy, but it's really, really important. So get yourself a tool, and it used to be horribly manual. Someone would have to go through things. When I was a consultant in the early days, I remember assessing server security manually, going through registry values. It was soul destroying, let me tell you. And now we've got tools that do it. So, make sure that you, if you get asked to fix things using this tool, from the results of this tool, do it. But even better, these tools will automatically fix things as well. So just make sure your stuff is plugged into them so they can do their thing. For Devsecops, I've kind of put this... We at Microsoft, let's shout out to GitHub, we like you to go and do GitHub Advanced Security and DevOps, but essentially make sure you're doing something to secure your pipeline, that your infrastructure as code, your templates and things are being scanned, that you look at your dependencies, and obviously looking for embedded secrets, etc. I only put this up because people keep asking me, what's the difference between these two, Defender for DevOps and GitHub Advanced Security? So I just chuck up a slide because it's way easier to explain. But like I said, look at the capabilities rather than the product names. That they're less important. Like, you need to make sure you've got these things going on both sides of it. And then lastly, just to kind of summarize kind of what we've got here, these are security capabilities you should know about. So just to sort of wrap it up here, you might not do these. These will probably not be your responsibility, but be mindful that these exist and make sure someone's doing something with them. I've got a couple of other ones down there that I haven't talked about so much, like data security, but this is stuff you should know about. This stuff is now highly smart. It's really smart. It's really automated. It's relatively easy to develop for and plug into. So, go and have a chat, and it usually goes across multiple clouds and onto your on-prem. So make sure that you kind of know this stuff exists and have conversations with your security team about it. Just not that I expect any of you to suddenly go along and start running this stuff, but making sure that you're just aware it exists and that you should be building things that should be able to talk to it. It's got a lot easier, but I think a lot of people have misconceptions from security tools being horrible to integrate with, security teams being horrible themselves, that this stuff is hard. So that is why I come to you, devs, to talk to you about all of these things. That is kind of the end of my talk. The QR code will send you to a load of links. They might sound very Microsoft-y, some of them, but actually, again, the principles are for pretty much any cloud. Thank you for paying attention to me. I realize it's Friday afternoon, so that's kind of that's a fun slot to fill. I realize also that I've only been able to scratch the surface of what is like a really, really big topic. Because I think it's like the end of the day, so I won't ask for questions, but I will just stand here and you can come talk to me. Also, I always bring a ton of stickers, so please come and help yourself at the front here, and I'll just hang around if you want to ask me anything one-on-one. That's awesome. Thank you very much for attending. Like I said, we love developers. Give security another chance. We're awesome, I promise. And thank you very much.